In this video, I thought I'd talk about Taekwondo pattern Hwa-Rang. And this is a red belt pattern in the ITF pattern set. And what I'd like to look at today specifically is move number 11 in this pattern. So if you take a look at move number 11, the books describe it a particular way. A lot of schools do it this way. But what I want you to see in this video is I'm going to teach you the original application of this technique in original style Taekwondo, because this technique here is based on a broken philosophy, something that just does not work. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. And so what I'm talking about here in pattern Hwa-Rang, if you go back and take a look at the previous technique in this pattern, so move number 10, you're doing a right middle punch in a walking stance. That's the technique. And then the next movement, they're assuming that your wrist is being grabbed. And what they do is they take this little cheater step forward here and bring their left foot up to their right foot. And then it says here, bringing the left palm to the right forefist, at the same time bending the right elbow about 45 degrees outward. But anyway, if you look at this here, this is not an official stance. You can see how the feet are kind of turned to the side a little bit there. That's not an official stance really that he's in. But the idea is they're using this because they want to grab, or they want to break out of a wrist grab. So this here is what they're saying is the application of move number 11, that somehow your wrist got grabbed after you threw a right middle punch, and that somehow you're now going to pivot to the side here, you're bringing your foot in, and then you're going to use the side kick to help break out of that grab. So if you take a look at this right here, I'll get to the part where it shows the side kick. There's the side kick. You can see that he's holding the wrist and then he's trying to break out of the grab using the side kick. However, there are several problems with this technique. First of all, the way it's described in the book anyway. The first is that if you're within arm's reach of somebody and they are grabbing your wrist, you are generally too close to use a side kick to begin with. To make matters worse, you're bringing the back foot up closer to your front foot in preparation for doing a right side kick. So now you've actually moved yourself even closer to your opponent. So you are completely jamming yourself when you do this technique, and you're not going to be able to get off a right leg side kick as it's described here in the book. It doesn't work. And the other problem with this is if somebody was grabbing your wrist, presumably they're standing on both feet and they're pulling on you. As soon as you lift a leg off the ground to try and prepare for a side kick, they're just going to pull you down to the ground. So if you don't have two legs to use for balance when somebody is pulling on your wrist, as soon as you pick a leg up off the ground, you're going down immediately if somebody is actually pulling on your wrist. But the biggest flaw of all is this notion that your wrist is going to get grabbed in the first place when you're punching. And as I've explained before, our school's philosophy and in original style Taekwondo is your wrist never gets grabbed when you are punching. That's just something that doesn't happen. The punch is there and it's gone too quickly to be grabbed, at least to have somebody lock in with a wrist grab. It's too fast for that. That doesn't work. That doesn't happen. So again, that is a philosophy that has come around in later years, but was not there originally. So now that you know what not to do for this technique, let me show you what is actually happening here. So instead of doing this, what you see in move number 11, what you should be doing is this. So if you look at pattern Jungun, the blue belt pattern that comes just a little bit before Hwa-Rang in the pattern set, there's a move towards the end of the pattern where you go from walking stance and you pivot into a closed stance. So you can see the feet are together here, and then you perform a right round punch. And they refer to it as an angle punch here in the book. I think sometimes they call it a turning punch as well. We simply refer to it as a round punch, okay? But the idea here is that you pivot 90 degrees to your left, you have your feet together, so you're pivoting, you're bringing your back leg up to your front leg, pivoting to the left, and you're throwing a right round punch. But now, imagine that you're doing that technique with a grab. So what it actually looks like is like this. So your feet are together, you're in a closed stance, you've performed a right punch, and you're punching into your left fist. So you're using the left hand as a grab, and then you're coming around and punching with the right hand like this into your left palm. That is what's happening. And what you're actually doing in this technique is you are grabbing an opponent who is coming at you from the blind side. You're grabbing them, holding them in position, and striking them with that round punch. That is the actual technique that is being done here. And then while you're holding that person in position, what you're doing then is performing the side kick against the original opponent that you had punched in move number 10. So in other words, your right punch knocks them backward a step, staggers them, which it would do if you punch somebody. So you punch them, it backs them up slightly. You have the opponent in your blind side coming, which you grab and strike. And then while holding them, you perform the side kick on the original opponent. And here, if you take a look, this is the 1965 Taekwondo textbook that was written by the founder. This right here, what I want you to see is grasping kick. So if you take a look at this right here, you see a technique known as a grasping kick. And it says right here, this is used for kicking one opponent while grasping the other. So we're looking specifically at the 1 foot version of the technique right here. But this is what you are doing in pattern Hwa-Rang, is you're actually holding on to the one opponent here that you just hit with a round punch, and you are performing the side kick on the other opponent. That is actually the technique that is being done. So it's a very rare example of a grasping kick in the Taekwondo curriculum. So this is the correct technique. This is the correct application. This is how it was done in original style Taekwondo. And unfortunately, there aren't very many schools who still teach this style, this particular branch of Taekwondo. Most people simply do it by the latest version of the book that they can get their hands on. And this is why it's so important to learn from an instructor and not just to learn from a book. Because this technique here, I encourage you to try it in class, but you'll find that this technique, the way that it's described in the later books, doesn't work. And if you go back to the older books and you start to look at these so-called hidden grappling techniques in some of the color belt patterns, you're going to see that the further back you go in time, the more and more those techniques disappear. And like I said, in original style Taekwondo, they weren't there at all, because the philosophy is simple, that your wrist is not going to get grabbed when you're punching. So these little intermediate movements and intermediate cheater steps that they do occasionally in these patterns, all it does is breaks up the pattern. It interrupts the flow of the pattern, and you're doing a damaged or a poor technique, something that doesn't work the way the book is describing it. So, like I said, this instead of doing this for move number 11 in pattern Hwa-Rang, what you should be doing is this right here. Move number 30 in pattern Jungun. Turning, pivoting 90 degrees, bringing your feet together, and doing a round punch. But the only thing you add to that is the grab. So you do the round punch, but you do it with a grab. So grabbing an opponent and punching the opponent in the temple or side of the head is what you're actually doing there. And there is plenty of examples of techniques in the ITF pattern set where you are grabbing your opponent and holding them for a strike. Whether you're holding the head and doing a knee strike, or whether you're holding behind the head with one hand and punching, there are plenty of examples of that in the ITF pattern set where that happens. And like I said, the philosophy is simple. Grabbing somebody's head and holding them for a strike, that's possible. That's realistic. That's possible. Having somebody actually catch your punching hand in the middle of a technique and just lock in for an instant wrist grab, that's not believable, not realistic. So, like I said, the technique in pattern Hwa-Rang is actually an example, a rare example of a grasping kick in Taekwondo. So holding one opponent while you kick the original opponent. That is what you are doing in pattern Hwa-Rang. You're not escaping from a wrist grab. So that's all I have for today. Thanks for watching.